بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. ثم الغرابة إما أن تكون في أصل السند، أي في الموضع الذي يدور الإسناد عليه ويرجع ولو تعددت الطرق إليه، وهو طرفه الذي فيه الصحابي، أو لا يكون كذلك بأن يكون التفرد في أثنائه، كأن يرويه عن الصحابي أكثر من واحد ثم ينفرد بروايته عن واحد منهم شخص واحد، فالأول الفرد المطلق. On page 50, Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimahullah, he briefly discussed about gharib, you remember. So in those two lines, he indicated that there are two types of gharib, but he did not explain those two types of gharib. And thereafter he discussed lots of other things. He mentioned about maqbul and mardud narrations and the ruling of practicing on ahad. Then he mentioned about the potential of what knowledge ahad narrations can convey. And he also spoke about the factors that will raise ahad to the level that they can convey firm knowledge. So now, after mentioning all of that, he reverts back to his discussion about gharib narrations, and he explains about those two types that he alluded to there. So he mentioned on page 50 that you get gharib mutlaq and gharib nisbi. So now he's going to explain the definition of what is gharib mutlaq and what is gharib nisbi. But before even explaining it from the very outset, it's important that you know that Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimahullah is the first person to define these terms in the way that he does. You will see that he confines the two types of gharib to a specific link in the sanad. So although scholars before Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimahullah, they did mention these terms. They did use both the terms al-fard al-mutlaq, al-gharib al-mutlaq and al-gharib al-nisbi, but they did not use these terms according to the definition that Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimahullah is defining here. So scholars before Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimahullah, they use these terms very differently, and depending how the time goes, inshallah, we will explain their definitions as well. Likewise, Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimahullah himself, he explained both these terms very differently and very broadly in another book of his, and that is an-Nukat ala Kitab ibn Salah. And I will inshallah present those explanations as well as we go through the text, just so that you can see how the author himself has defined these terms differently in another book of his. So just know that Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimahullah here, he is not quoting a definition of others. Rather, he is innovating, he's making up these definitions. And he's doing this here because he wants to codify this science. So he's suggesting that students and scholars who come after him, now they should use these terms in this way. You understand? That he's suggesting how you should use these terms moving forward. So he's not informing us how previous scholars used these words, rather he's telling us that this is how you should use these words. So yes, we could apply these terms to the statements of previous scholars, and inshallah I'll also show you how we could apply these statements. But these here are not definitions. Scholars before him did not use these terms, these exact terms, in the way that he is defining here. So let us go through the text. He writes, ثم الغرابة إما أن تكون في أصل السند. The singularity, that is where you have one person in a link, it could be at أصل السند, at the root of the chain. So now he explains what's the root of the chain. He says, أي في الموضع الذي يدور الإسناد عليه ويرجع. It's that place where the chains revolve around and returns. ولو تعددت الطرق إليه, even if there are numerous paths to it. So that means that all the different chains will come back to this one link, and from there it goes to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. وهو طرفه الذي فيه الصحابي, and it is the side where the Sahabi is on. So inshallah I'll explain this shortly. Just know that the singularity is at the beginning of the sanad. أو لا يكون كذلك, or it's not like that. بأن يكون تفرد في أثنائه. This means that you have a single person, the singularity is somewhere else in the chain. كأن يرويه عن الصحابي أكثر من واحد, that from the Sahabi you have more than one person narrating it. ثم ينفرد بروايته عن واحد منهم شخص واحد, and then you have only one person who is narrating from them. So in this entire text, Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimahullah, he explained two scenarios. The first is that there is only one person in the beginning of the chain, and thereafter it doesn't matter now whether you have one, whether you have many narrators, but in the beginning of the chain you have only one narrator. That's the one scenario. And then the second scenario is that you have one person somewhere in the middle of the chain. So it's not at the beginning of the chain, the single person is in the middle or at any other link within the chain. So now he comments with regards to the first scenario where you have one person only at the beginning of the chain. He says, فَالْأَوَّلُ الْفَرْضُ الْمُطْلَقِ, that as for the first, that is fardul mutlaq. So do you understand what's fardul mutlaq? And you can call it al-gharib al-mutlaq or al-fardul mutlaq, because according to Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimahullah, and we'll discuss this in inshallah in the next lesson or the lesson thereafter, all depending on how time goes. But according to Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimahullah, both are synonyms. Gharib and fard have the same meaning. So whether you want to call it al-fardul mutlaq or you want to call it al-gharib al-mutlaq, this is where the solitary narrator, the single narrator, is at the beginning of the sanad. So he said, ثم الغرابة إما أن تكون في أصل السند, that the single narrator is at the أصل السند. Now أصل السند we explained it to mean the root of the chain. So Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimahullah, when he uses this word أصل السند, which exact link is he referring to? So here, if you read this text and you see that he's saying Aslu Sanad, what do you think? Which link is he speaking about? The link of the Sahabi, link of the Tabi'i, yes. So if a person just hears the word Aslu Sanad, he would assume that it refers to the link of the Sahaba. So that means there must be a singular Sahaba, there must be only one Sahabi. And then that will also be supported with his words that comes after this, isn't في الموضع الذي يدور الإسناد عليه ويرجع. If you have only one Sahabi, after that now you can, if you have a paper, you can write it, put Abu Huraira radiyallahu an. You can put 5 students of his, and from each one of these 5 you can put another 5, and then from each one of them 5. You can see it's becoming like a pyramid, but ultimately it's all coming back to this one narrator, to Abu Huraira radiyallahu anhu. And from him then the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So if there are, it says, if there's only one Sahabi, then all the links reach up to him. So you understand? So Ulama Ibn al-Hanbali rahimahullah, he mentioned in Al-Far'u al-Athith on page 55, وإن كان المتبادر في أصل السند هنا وهو الموضع الذي يدور الإسناد عليه ويرجع ولو تعددت الطرق إليه هو الصحابي. That if a person is to just look at this entire sentence of the author, he would assume that the author is speaking about the link of the Sahabi. So therefore, to understand this text of Nuzha an-Naḍar, we will have to look at what Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimahullah himself explained. So Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimahullah, when he was giving dars, then he explained this paragraph, and fortunately his students then transmitted what he said. So in the beginning he said that Sahibul Bayt adra bima fihi, that the person who wrote the book, he will be more well versed with what he intended. So therefore, if he gave his own explanation, and especially since we mentioned that he is coming up with these definitions, so we therefore need to understand properly what is he suggesting. That he is suggesting that we should use these terminologies in this way. So how exactly is he suggesting, and is he mentioning to us that we should use these terminologies? So we'll first look at what he mentioned in his lesson, and then after that we'll come back to what he mentioned here in the book. So his student Allama Qasim ibn Qutlubagha rahimahullah, he quotes the explanation that Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimahullah verbally gave to them. So he writes, قال المصنف, so he's referring to Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimahullah, the author has said, أي الذي يروي عن الصحابي وهو التابع. This is القول المبتكر on page 46. That what he means by أصل السند الذي يروي عن الصحابي وهو التابع. So what does it mean? That there must be a single tabi'i. So now look at the text. He wrote وهو طرفه الذي فيه الصحابي. It is on the side. He used the word طرف. So he's not referring to a link. So this should not be understood to mean that there must only be one Sahabi. Rather, what Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimahullah is intending to say is that the sanad starts from the side where the Sahabi is on. You understand? He's not speaking about the exact and the precise link. Rather, he's explaining which end of the chain you should look at. So, Aslu Sanad is where the Sahabi is. It's not on the other end where you have the author of the book like Imam Bukhari rahimahullah, or Imam Muslim rahimahullah, or Imam Abu Dawud, or Imam Tirmidhi rahimahullah. Rather, you flip the link around and you are looking at that side where the Sahabi is. So, because some scholars use the word Aslu Sanad, and they also use the word Awwalu Sanad for the other end. So they will use Aslu Sanad for the end of where Imam Bukhari and them are. Because that's where, if you have to really think about it, the Sanad is originating from there and now coming up all the way to the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So they assuming that the seed is in the books of the author. So the author of the book, the Sanad starts from him. But Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimahullah is mentioning, no, it's the other way around. He's saying that here when he used the term Aslu Sanad, then he is referring to the Sanad from the link of the Sahaba. So Mullah Ali Qari rahimahullah, he quotes that Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimahullah said, أصل السند وأوله ومنشأه وآخره ونحو ذلك. All these kind of terms, it just depends how you want to use it. From the context, the person should understand that if you say that the sanad starts from Imam Bukhari rahimahullah, this is an absolutely correct statement, that Imam Bukhari is narrating from his teacher, who is narrating from his teacher. Otherwise you can say that the other way, that yuradu bihi min jihati sahabi, that the sanad starts from Umar radiyallahu an, from Abu Hurairah radiyallahu an, from Aisha radiyallahu anha. So it depends how you want to look at it. Yuradu bihi min jihati sahabi wa yuradu bihi at-tarf al-akhar bihasb al-maqam. In the context, the listener will understand what you are speaking about. So Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimahullah, he clarified that when he used the term Aslu Sanad here, then he is referring to that end of the chain. He's not referring to this end where it starts from the author of the books. Rather, he is referring to that side of the chain which starts from the Sahabi. Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimahullah then explained the reason why there is no need to look at the link of the companions, because he's saying that you must start from the tabi'i. So he says, وَإِنَّمَا لَمْ يُتَكَلَّمْ فِي الصَّحَابِيِّ لِأَنَّ الْمَقْصُودَ مَا يَتَرَتَّبُ عَلَيْهِ مِنَ الْقَبُولِ وَالرَّدِّ وَالصَّحَابَةُ كُلُّهُم عُدُولٌ. That the reason why we're not even speaking about the Sahabi, because the whole objective is that we want to find whether we can accept this narration or whether we cannot accept this narration, whether we will have to reject this narration. So was Sahaba kullum adul. Since the Sahaba are all reliable, therefore we don't even have to look at that link. We can ignore that link and start from the next link, and that is the one who is quoting from the Sahabi. So this here is the explanation that Allama Qasim ibn Qutlabagha rahimahullah quoted from his respected teacher, the author of the kitab, Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimahullah. Another student of Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimahullah, Allama Baqa'i rahimahullah, he mentions that the author said, وَلَا يُتَوَهَّمُ أَنَّهُ بِالنِّسْبَةِ إِلَى الصَّحَابِيِّ لِأَنَّ تَفَرُّدَ الصَّحَابِيِّ لَا يُلْحَقُ بِهِ شَيْءٌ مِّنَ الْوَهْنِ. This is in Qada al-Watr on volume 2 on page 644. So Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimahullah is explaining that if there is a single tabi'i, then this is what will be considered as al-fardul mutlaq. And as I said, that if you want to, you can refer to it as al-gharibul mutlaq or as al-fardul mutlaq, because they are mawsuf sifa, so you can either put the alif lam. If you are putting the alif lam, then you will have to put it on both words, so you will have to say al-fardul and then al-mutlaq. Or if you want to, you can put a tanween on both words and you can say fardun mutlaqun, gharibun mutlaqun. So for a narration to be fardul mutlaq, Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimahullah is suggesting that we ignore the link in which there is the sahabi and we look from the next link, and that is the link of the tabi'i. Now in contrast to Aziz and Mashhur, because for Aziz and Mashhur isn't, we said that there you will have to look at the link of the Sahaba. So we'll explain about this shortly. Just know for now that if there is a single tabi'i, if there is only one tabi'i, then the narration will be al-fardul mutlaq or al-gharibul mutlaq. Then Alama Qasim rahimahullah, he quotes that the author said sawa'un istamarra tafarrud am la, ay bi an rawahu anhu jama'a. From the tabi'i you can have lots of narrators, it's immaterial, or whether you have only one narrator from the tabi'i, that's also fine. So it shows that as long as you have a single tabi'i, that narration is already al-fardul mutlaq. Now it does not matter how many narrators there are in the other links. So once there is only one tabi'i that's quoting that report, then irrespective whether there is only one narrator in the next link and even in the links thereafter, or whether there are hundreds of narrators, that narration will continue to be al-fardul mutlaq. Now once we understand this direct explanation that the author presented, we can now look at how Mullah Ali Qari rahimahullah explained this, because he explains a little bit more about the link of the Sahaba. So he says, وَكَوْنُ الْغَرَابَ فِي هَذَا الطَّرْفِ هو أن يروي تابعي واحد عن صحابي ولا يتابعه غيره في روايته عن ذلك الصحابي. This is simple to understand. سواء تعدد الصحابي في تلك الرواية أو لا. This is the reason why I wanted to quote this here. It doesn't matter whether this one tabi'i is quoting from multiple companions. That is saying that Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu also narrated this, Abdullah ibn Umar radiyallahu anhu, he also narrated it, and Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu, he also narrated it. So whether he's quoting from multiple sahaba or whether he's only quoting from one sahabi. وأما انفراد الصحابي عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فليس غرابة إذ ليس في الصحابة ما يوجب قدحا فانفراد الصحابي يوجب تعدد غيره بل يكون أرجح. Will inshallah explain that shortly. So Mullah Ali Qari rahimahullah, he didn't actually claim that this view of not taking into consideration the link of the Sahaba, this here is the view of the Muhaddithin. So he says, وَأَمَّا الصَّحَابِيُّ وَإِنْ كَانَ مِنْ رِجَالِ الْإِسْنَادِ إِلَّا أَنَّ الْمُحَدِّثِينَ لَمْ يَعُدُّوهُ مِنْهُمْ لِأَنَّ كُلَّهُمْ عُدُولَ عَلَى الْإِطْلَاقِ. So he's mentioned that all Sahaba are reliable. من خالط الفتن وغيرهم, that irrespective of those Sahaba radiallahu anhum who were involved, in all the trials and the tribulation after the killing of Uthman radiallahu anhum. So whether they were involved in that or not, all of the Sahaba, because the testimony comes in the Quran. In Al-Yawaqit wa Durar, Ulama Munawi rahimahullah, he also agreed that the singularity is in the link of the one narrating from the Sahabi. And the same is also adopted in Laqat al-Durar wal Murad bi asl al-sanad al-tabi'i. Ulama Tahir al-Jazairi, he said, وقد عرفت آنفا أن الغريب ما ينفرد بروايته شخص في أي موضع كان من مواضع السند وأن انفراد الصحابي فقط بالحديث لا يوجب الحكم له بالغرابة فالفرد المطلق هو ما ينفرد بروايته عن الصحابي واحد من التابعين. He mentions this in توجيه النظر إلى أصول الأثر volume 1 page 490. So it's in this light that Sheikh Nuruddin Utr also he wrote in the footnotes وقوله في أصل السند أي التابعي فإذا تفرد التابعي بالحديث فغرابته في أصل السند. So the crux is that we do not look at the link of the Sahaba, rather the first, if there's only one person in the first link and that is the link of the Tabi'in, then this will be considered as Al-Gharib al-Mutlaq. However, this here now contradicts what was understood from Aziz and Mashhur. So therefore Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimahullah he explained, he said هذا بخلاف ما تقدم في حد العزيز والمشهور حيث قالوا إن العزيز لابد فيه ألا ينقص عن اثنين من الأول إلى الآخر فإن إطلاقه يتناول ذلك ووجهه أن الكلام هنا في وصف السند بذلك والكلام هنا فيما يتعلق بالقبول والرد. So if you remember in the example of Aziz, Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimullah, he made sure to take the name of Abu Huraira radiyallahu anhu, even though he thereafter only explained about the sanad of Anas radiyallahu anhu. You remember, we explained all of that in lesson 22. So Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimullah is explaining here, he's saying that there the reason why you needed two companions, in al-Aziz la budda fihi alla yanqusa an ithnain min al-awwal ila al-akhir. So min al-awwal, there the awwal refers to the link of the Sahaba as well. فإن إطلاقه يتناول ذلك. He's saying yes, if you just use the word awwal, then it could refer to the first link as the link of the Tabi'in, and it could also refer to the first link as the link of the Sahaba. So he's saying there you are basically just trying to use a word, or you're trying to give a definition. So you just want to call the narration a Aziz narration, or you just want to refer to the narration as a Mashhur narration. But here when we are talking about Al-Fardul Mutlaq and Al-Fardul Nisbi, our objective here is now to see whether we can accept the narration or not. So in short, Aslu Sanad refers to the link of the Tabi'i who is narrating from the Sahabi. If the Tabi'i is a single narrator transmitting from the Sahabi, then the narration will be called Al-Fardul Mutlaq. But now what happens if there is only a single Sahabi? That we understand and we accept that it will not be Al-Gharib al-Mutlaq. So we know, okay, if there's only one Sahabi, it's going to be it won't be Al-Fard al-Mutlaq, it won't be Al-Gharib al-Mutlaq. But will it be a Gharib narration? So in response to this here, if the singularity only exists in the link of the Sahabi, then there are two opinions. So you understand basically what's happening, that you have one Sahabi, and from this one Sahabi now you have three Tabi'in, from each one of them you have four narrators, and then you have multiple narrators in every other link. Will you call this a Gharib narration, or will it not be called a Gharib narration? Will you call it a Gharib narration because there is only one Sahabi, or will you not call it a Gharib narration based on this what Hafiz ibn Hajar rahmallah mentioned, that you're not going to be referring to it as Al-Fardul Mutlaq? So the answer is that if there's only one Sahabi, then like I said, there's different opinions. Some scholars, they claim that this narration will still be termed as Gharib, and they understood this from Ibn Manda rahimahullah, that it must be called Gharib. So if you have one Sahabi and thereafter many Tabi'in and lots of people in the other links, the narration will be called Gharib. Why? Because there is only one Sahabi. So that's the one group. And then other scholars, they state that this narration will not be considered as Gharib because we do not consider the link of the Sahaba. Now with regards to that first view, that if the Sahabi is alone, then the narration will be called Gharib, there are again two groups of scholars. So the first group, they say that even though the narration is Gharib, it will not be Al-Gharib al-Mutlaq. Why it will not be Al-Gharib al-Mutlaq? Because Asl al-Sanad refers to the link which comes after the Sahaba, and that is the link of the Tabi'in. So it will only be a Gharib narration, but it will not be a Al-Gharib al-Mutlaq. You cannot refer to it as Al-Fardul Mutlaq. So that is the one group. And the other group, they say that if the Sahabi is alone, then you may also refer to it using the term Al-Fardul Mutlaq. But you cannot deny that if there is only a single Tabi'i, then also you can use the word Al-Fardul Mutlaq. So basically Al-Fardul Mutlaq would refer to those narrations where there is only one Sahabi, or those narrations where there is only one tabi'i. You understand? So the second opinion is understood from the text of Laqtu Durar. أما إذا انفرد فيه الصحابي فهو غريب. That if there is only one sahabi, then it is غريب. And thereafter he mentions والحق أن من فرد به الصحابي فهو غريب مطلق. You see? Likewise, in an-Naḍar on page 40, Alama Akram Sindi rahimullah, he also understood that this here is the intent of the author. أو المراد بذلك الطرف الكلي الشامل للتابع. So he's using the word الشامل. Shamil means that it incorporates, and al-kulli, that means it refers to those situations where you have the only one sahabi, and it also includes those instances when you only have one tabi'i. And this here is also the explanation that Sheikh Ibrahim Lahim provides in his commentary. So in short, if there is a single tabi'i, then it's definitely al-fardul mutlaq. If there is a single sahabi, now some scholars would say that it can be called gharib. And from these scholars, there will be a few scholars who agree that it can also be referred to as al-fardul mutlaq. And others said that it will not be permissible to refer to this here as gharib. So now you remember the text which we just quoted from Mullah Ali Qari rahmallah earlier. I told you we'll come back to it on page 233. سواء تعدد الصحابي في تلك الرواية أو لا وأما انفراد الصحابي عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فليس غرابة. So you can see he is of this view that it will not be considered as a gharib narration. إذ ليس في الصحابة ما يجب قدحا فانفراد الصحابة يجب تعدد غيره بل يكون أرجح. Now in light of everything that I explained until here, it's clear that the words of Nuzha an-Naḍar are not phrased in the best of ways, isn't it? Hafiz ibn Hajar rahmallah, he could have worded this here in a better way so that it would be easier to understand that he is referring to the link of the tabi'in. Alama ibn al-Hanbali rahmallah, he phrased this in Qaful Athar. He phrased it like this here: هو ما ينفرد بروايته واحد في أي موضع كان الانفراد من السند بعد الصحابي وهذا هو الغريب من جهة المتن والسند. So this here is basically معا. فإن كانت الغرابة في التابع سواء كانت فيه فقط أو فيه وفي من يليه فقط أو في جميع من بعد الصحابي أو أكثره سمي الحديث بالفرد المطلق. He mentions this here in قفو الأثر في صفوة علوم الأثر on page 47. And then in his other book الفرع الأثيث, Alama ibn al-Hanbali rahimahullah, he remarked that the better way is how he phrased it in قفو الأثر. So he wrote وهذا التعبير أولى من تعبير قاضي القضاة بقوله في أصل السند إذ أطلق أصل السند وأراد به طرفه الذي فيه الصحابة أي والتابعين أيضا. Alama ibn al-Hanbali rahimahullah, he then mentioned the statement that we quoted earlier, that أصل السند that Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimahullah is using. This word here could use make the reader assume that he intends only the link of the Sahabi. Likewise, Alama al-Qani rahimahullah, Qada al-Watar on page 645. So he also said, لو قال المصنف الذي يتصل بالصحابة كان أظهر. That had the author used the rather said الذي يتصل بالصحابة, then you would have understood easier that he is referring to the link of the tabi'in. Now because Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimahullah did not phrase it properly, like I told you that many scholars, they understood incorrectly what he said. So since many of you studied Taysir Mustalah al-Hadith of Sheikh Mahmud Tahan, so I just need to clarify something so that you do not become confused. And for those of you who did not, although very few, I think all of you probably did, nevertheless, if there's anyone listening to the recording and probably if they didn't read it, then as we are going through every chapter, it will be good to also go through his through this book of his Taysir Mustalah al-Hadith. And likewise, the commentary, or at least this one book. If you go through this one book, it will be good. So Sheikh Mahmud Tahan, he claimed that the singularity has to be in the link of the Sahabi. So he wrote this here in the footnote on page 39. of Taysir Mustalah al-Ḥadīth. So this here, it's fine if it's just saying that it's the Sahabi, because like I said, that it incorporates, he could be taking that view. I mentioned the different views. But then he claimed that the understanding of Mullah Ali Qari rahimahullah is incorrect. So from what we explained and the exact explanations that the author gave in his durus, who do you think is incorrect? The Sheikh Mahmud Tahan, is he correct and Mullah Ali Qari rahimahullah is incorrect? Or is Mullah Ali Qari really incorrect? So we quoted the explanation of Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimahullah. It's very clear that the Sheikh Mahmud Tahan, his understanding and also his criticism about incorrect. So he did not take into consideration the explanation which the author gave himself. So this kind of a narration will be called Al-Fard al-Muṭlaq. Now why will it be called Al-Muṭlaq? The reason is because we can make itlaq and we can say that no one narrated it besides this narrator. لإطلاق فرديته وعدم تقييده بالمتن والإسناد. This here is mentioned in an-Naḍar on page 42. Inshallah, we'll continue from here. Jazakumullah khairan. Subhanallah wa bihamdi. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu.